Please.
Hey. Thank you for saying please for me.
I never signed
You
it.
can start having this call by the door of the board.
Yeah, I'm required.
Yeah.
Ron, I appreciate you doing that.
I know, Helen, because, you know, that takes 10 minutes
But
once
my
we
name's
start.
found in the minutes anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody just drove. Rick's on his way.
Rick is on the
Somebody just drove up.
Have we heard from Sergio? Joe, I'd like you to make a report to the council. He's missed he's been there once out of the last 6 meetings.
He did, last thing that he did.
Is the responsibility to call the planner or you, not?
I know, he had, this is the first meeting he hasn't contacted. All right, you want to come in? Are you starting? There it is.
Rick?
Ready? Am I late?
No.
You're on the
Were you sitting on my lap? What are you doing? I was wondering where you were going.
Have it.
All right, I'm going to call the planning board meeting to order for October the 4th, 2017 at 7:01 p.m. Have a roll call, please.
Okay, Mike Carpenter, are you here?
I am.
Ron Surazio, are you here?
Present.
Jack Sheldon, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Richard Sparks, are you here?
Here.
Chair Joe Perry, are you here?
Here.
Secretary Helen Hardy is also here, also present. Our staff, Cheryl Maynard, planner, Joanna Gilly, our solicitor, I'm forgetting people, and the people whose names are entered on the sign-in sheet in front of me, and who have I forgotten this name?
Should we repeat, Mike?
We have not heard from Sergio Spaziano, we assume that he's on his way.
Accept the motion at this time for the minutes of September 6th. So moved. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. Discussion?
I had a couple of completely unsubstantive things that I will just pass to Cheryl.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Accept the motion at this time for the minutes for September 20th, 2017. So moved. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Rick. Any discussion?
I had there was one thing, only one, and that is at the bottom, adjournment. It just should say, that's all. Also not substantive, but
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have board members report. Do you have anything in the land trust this evening?
Yes, we do. Some pictures attached around, okay, we can take a look. There's the notes on the back. That's the, taking in the new parking lot, the other improvements that have been made. And part of what went on last night, a couple of nice mature does were taken over at the grass property as a result of the bow hunting effort. And there's a lot of positive feedback so far, but put everybody at ease, and the fact that they're not going to make any changes in terms of adding properties or extending the number of licenses until season's over and all the information's in. like to recognize Keith Moffett. He made a $1,500 donation to the land trust in terms of material and labor. And Sue Dillon is working with the land trust, and it looks like we're gonna have the Hayfield property trails map online as a result of those efforts, so that's all good positive stuff. And that's it for interest.
Good, thank you, Mike.
Is there a sign-in sheet at any of these properties for the trails, so we know if there's any use on,
No.
maybe it's something the land trust might want to think about?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
John,
Yes.
do you want me to report on correspondence?
Yeah,
Just follow through.
yeah.
Maybe say for the record that Sergio Staciano arrived at 7:05.
I'm assuming we don't have anything for practical issues.
No, sir.
So no report from conservation, we have anything for the meeting. All right. I did skip by correspondence, I did want to go back to the, apologize. We did have some information that Cheryl wanted to pass along regarding the Scott Millar meeting with her.
Yes. Two things. One is Scott, which I'll get to second. The first thing is that I just wanted to let the board know that J&C Properties did receive their permit to alter freshwater wetlands. I did get correspondence for that, and because the planning board did send a letter, I just wanted to let the board know that we did receive correspondence that can go forward to the next step. The second piece of
Excuse
correspondence.
me, that's Round Hill Road?
That's Round Hill Road, yes. The second piece of correspondence is from Scott Millar, who had been at our last planning board meeting. He's the man who was here from Grow Smart Rhode Island. After our last planning board meeting, we did have another meeting in adjacent local community regarding the farm and forest business use. And that particular meeting did meet with quite a bit of resistance. So he did give me a call and suggested that perhaps the timing isn't quite right for this. So he suggested placing the farm and forest business use overlay on the back burner for now. And I guess at this point I would just say to the board that I'll keep in touch with Scott and see, if this comes up again, or if we can reintroduce the concept at a more appropriate time.
I apologize, Cheryl. He had a meeting with whom?
He met with another town nearby, another community, and met with a lot of resistance.
Okay.
I'd like to remind the board I'm the only person that voted positively on the Round Hill Road property.
Okay. That's it for correspondence. So we're moving up to the zoning section. We got the review and recommendation for a possible amendment to the zoning ordinance from the town council to change firearm shops and ammunition shops, archery shops, edge weapons shops from not permitted to special use in an AR residential zone.
Mr. Chair? I'd like to make a motion that we table any discussion on this subject due to tragic recent events and substitute it for a little compassion and understanding for the victims and their families and a moment of silence.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'm gonna discuss that. I understand the moment of silence, so that's a given. The second thing is a moment of compassion for these things that continue to happen is not compassionate. I don't think this board's gonna react positively or negatively to what's in front of us. So the board needs to move forward and get things done. So if we don't do this, You know, that might have come up before, so I'd like to just, if you would, whoever had the second, pull it out and have the moment of silence, but we need to do work.
Any other discussion from the board? I'd like to ask the solicitor a question. We have a deadline where we have to file a report to town council on this subject, right?
Yes, per the charter, it's 45 days from the date of request,
Which is the answer tomorrow.
I believe, yes.
So we have to at least have some discussion, come to some sort of
Yes, and the next town council meeting obviously is the 12th, so that would be when they present it. So I believe as long as we have it to them before the 12th, that should be.
well, they have to set it up for a public hearing, have a first reading and set up for a public hearing.
Right.
If there was any changes. That's why we, we're kind of under a deadline, I understand that there has been some events recently, it was very tragic. I don't believe that this particular item, is gonna affect the national thing. I think we, have to deal with what the town needs done, but I'd like,
So you're asking everybody to vote negatively on the motion, so we can move forward?
yes,
Okay.
I think it's in the best interest of the board at this time. I do have sympathy for the people, it's terrible. There's been a lot of bad things happen in the world, but, we have to continue our business, I believe, so. If there's no further discussion, I'll take a vote at this time. Any other further discussion from anybody, any comments? Okay. Okay, so we're voting in favor, that means we're in favor of tabling this. Okay, so all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed?
No?
No.
Motion
And
carried.
he's gonna do it without me,
Mike,
okay? And I hope at some point in time, you realize how tragic this was.
I don't think anybody's denying that, Mike.
Look,
I don't think anybody's denying that it's tragic.
this
I'm
is
not
not on the
gonna-
agenda, Mike's leaving.
I know.
It's not on the agenda, move on.
Mike, you don't have to vote on it. You can abstain, you can
I
remain for the
voted.
discussion.
I voted, okay? And I'm not here to create any disturbance, I'm just expressing my view.
So I'd make a motion for a moment of silence due to the tragedy in Las Vegas and other tragedies that have occurred.
Second. We have a moment of silence, please. Okay, let's see how we're gonna get started here. I'd like to possibly give a little history to everybody regarding how this became in front of us. Excuse me?
Why don't you let the attorney do it, she could add more
What's that?
ways to this, the history.
Well, I was just gonna, I don't know if you want to correct that, but there's just, I just wanted to go back in time from the beginning. This all began back in 2013. There was an application for a gun shop in an AR zone. And when it went to the planning board, it was approved for a special use permit as a recommendation to the zoning board. When it got to the zoning board, there was no clarity in the section of the zone ordinance under the use table. It was under section 7, business, and under subsection 2, which is for specialty shops and gun shop as a specialty shop. The solicitor at the time didn't feel it was appropriate, so the applicant withdrew his application without prejudice at the time. After that, we were requested by the zoning board actually to review the ordinance for the gun shops and the use table and make a recommendation to the council. So in 2013 we did so, and the current use table that's in effect is not allowed in an AR zone, and it's allowed in a GBM and in the manufacturing district only. And it was up to 2015, it became before, when we were working on more zoning ordinance, that it actually went to the council. And it was just brought back to the board for a re-vote at that time, and we re-voted it as it was presented in 2013, it went to the council in 2015, and was approved. The current council asked us to review it again and consider making it a special use in an AR zone. That's where we are tonight, so I just wanted to let everybody know where we were. I do think it's important that if we do make any changes to it, that we maybe add some definitions to types of gun shops that are going to be allowed in the AR zone compared to ones that are in the commercial zones. Because from the council meeting and from the members of the council speaking, there was some discussion that, you know, that these type of shops that are in AR are the same as like the Foster Bear Arms, where you drive in and pull up and go in and you shop to purchase something. They do it differently. You know, it's mostly mail order, you know, through the internet. They're not a storefront type of business. So I think there's got to be some clarification if we do allow it, that it's the type of shops that are currently in there, you know, with the special use. I know there is some remedies there through the special use permit, but I think there could be confusion if we don't clarify that also. Because I think just putting it on the use table doesn't really explain everything. So I think it should be very clear what we're proposing if we do make any changes this evening, if that's what we wish to do. So at this point, you know, I will take discussion from the board.
Joe? That was, I think that might have been my first meeting when that was adopted. And I questioned at the time why we would ban gun shops when we or require special use ban when we allow a gun range by special use permit. And, I just thought that was inconsistent. But I wouldn't favor changing it from what it is now. And I would even say that a gun range, depending on how it's defined, should not be allowed in a residential area. So I would go the other way. And the thing about this is you're essentially allowing an exception for a commercial enterprise in a residential zoned area. If you're going to do it for a gun shop, what's so special, or what contributes to the rural quality of life of Foster by a gun shop as opposed to a Dunkin' Donuts or something else? So I just think it's inconsistent with the whole concept of zoning and having zoning for commercial and for general business mixed use. And this handout that came, the only reference I found to the zoning was the first one. New Haven, it's on the top of the second page, and that for their gun shops, it's zoned in business and industrial districts. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that, but they're not, and I don't know about the other municipalities because it didn't identify what type of zoning, whether it was residential or commercial, but I suspect they're all commercial. And I just don't think they belong in residential areas, particularly if the definition of a gun shop is expanded to include test firing of weapons and putting in ranges and that type of thing.
No, you did see that we have I believe 4 licensed guns,
And we're at 5.
well, 4 in an AR zone.
Oh,
One's in the DPM. So there's 4 right there. Yeah, Henry Chavez is on Danielson Pike, so that's in the GC. There's 4 in the AR zone at this time that have been, I guess, around for quite a few years that they get a license from the council.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with existing
They're,
businesses at all.
you know, as an accessory use. I ask you, are you thinking like a gun store or just any sale?
I was thinking anything, but I hadn't thought about whether it's just a gun store versus some facility that offers other types of services that include firing of weapons. But I mean, what's the purpose of passing zoning ordinances if we're gonna change them every 2 years? Because I don't know which way the wind's blow. It seems there should be some logic behind it, some consistency in terms of protecting the rurality of the town and in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And I don't see where a gun shop of any kind adds to the rural quality or any commercial thing. That's why we have the zoning for commercial areas.
Jack?
You apparently have a 4 AR zoning now. Most of these there's no real store there. This is just somebody operating a business out of their house.
Correct. I think what happened in 2013 when the laws were made stricter, that they require now that you have an address for where your stores and guns. It's more strict than it was in previous years when the other stores were first put in. I think that they changed in 2013, I believe, when the law was a little stricter. So I think that's why that application came in.
could we get some input from the solicitor as to laws being more stricter or, I know you don't want to give us advice as to which way to go, but, are the shops that exist, well, I'll ask the whole question. The shops that exist, are they enough to handle the traffic that is purported? And, reading a lot of stuff online, whether any of it's true or not, supposedly it's not legal guns, it's illegal guns, but, right now we're in a crazy position. So what about Foster particularly? Could you give us some?
So as far as the traffic, I mean, I don't know what the business climate in Foster is with respect to the sale of guns. I do know that you're asking about stringent laws and things like that, but to get the license from the ATF, it is a very rigorous process. If that's what you're...
I would wonder, you don't want any of my personal views, I would wonder, do we need more? We don't want, we have Scott Millar come in before us and us saying, we're a laissez-faire community and pretty much allow home businesses, so, does that fit in this conversation? The Scott Millar conversation.
I was wondering the same thing.
And that's for you people who just, there's been a gentleman come before us encouraging us to change some of our zoning to allow more home businesses usage. The simple explanation.
I don't know that somebody would go through the process if they didn't feel that there was some type of need, or that there would be a need. So you don't open up a business if you don't think that you're going to be successful. So I think it is a pretty rigorous process. And I know that there's that one application. I'm not sure I don't know of any other interest in the town right now.
Jeff?
Who is eligible for a firearms license? It mentions has premises for conducting business or collecting. Seems to me that I'm not sure if you need a license for collecting. All right, you need a firearms license for collecting, but anybody can be a collector. As long as they apply the rules to the case. I don't see where zoning comes into any part of this. Unless they want to open up a physical store by themselves. If they're operating out of their house, there's nothing here that stands in the way of that. You know, I mean, we have a lot of collectors in town. People
But
have-
that's not what they're asking for, Jeff. They're asking for a license to sell or trade, not to collect.
But I think Jeff is saying that
But
what
collecting
happens
is-
now is,
But collecting is selling and trading.
But so in order to do that
But it has to be done
transaction,
legally.
it has to be done
Or it
at
should be.
a location or through somebody who has this license. So if I wanted to buy a gun from you, you can't just send it to me, you have to go through this third party.
But if the gentleman has a license and he's operating out of his house, which we've all discussed as an accessory use, we haven't discussed firearms, but we've discussed accessory uses for AR zoning. How does this not fit the definition of accessory use? For somebody who, I mean, under accessory uses, you can't have your equipment exposed in the yard, you can't, like, have trucks parked on the property, but this is all, I'm assuming that anybody that wants to do this, is gonna have this inside of his house. And he's not gonna have it in public. And I don't know what the limit of the number of guns you can sell as either a seller or a collector. I don't even know if there is such a restriction. This doesn't say. But obviously you have people that do that now. And again, under AR zoning, unless you're going to make specific exceptions to AR zoning, then AR zoning this is what AR zoning is about. Not that I'm necessarily for AR zoning, but
I didn't get the impression we were talking about someone's basement shop. I thought we were talking about a commercial, regular commercial enterprise, a separate facility set up for storage, sale, possible manufacturer assemble, and all that kind of stuff. Is that what we're talking about?
I think we're talking, well, I think the thing is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, to get a federal firearms license for anybody to get it to sell, they can get the approvals from the federal government, and then they still need approval from the town or jurisdiction where they reside to complete the process of the town needs to issue a license, which they do for existing ones. So I think for the new ones, because of the difference in what happened when they got stricter, it's a little more difficult now to get that without having to go through the zoning process.
So you
Because
can
the
get-
property comes into play a little more.
Right, well, can you get the license before you get the property? Or do you need to
No, that
write on
is-
the
That's an
application?
integral part now. I
Well,
think.
that's what do you need?
That's where I think the twist came in 2013.
It's contingent on getting the permission from the town. So the ATF can say you're clear, but you don't get the license until the town says, okay.
Well, maybe we should differentiate between someone who's collecting in their basement and that scale of operation as opposed to what we normally consider commercial operation.
Anything else from the board before I take anything from the audience?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of points. I want to make clear that the question before this board is not whether to permit people to be licensed with these federal licenses. I don't think that's the purview of this board. The question before us is what use, whether a particular use should be permitted for zoning use of the property. The question is whether we should permit the use of property in the AR zone to engage in commercial endeavors, essentially with firearm shops, dealers. This is, this, I think relates both to what Ron said and the solicitor. And even what Jeff said, firearms collector, that's a private endeavor, that's not a commercial endeavor. That's anyone with any residence anywhere, I think we're in agreement can engage in that. That is not a use that is governed by zoning. However, the commercial endeavor, the commercial component is governed by zoning, and that's the question before this board. In my opinion, a firearms dealership is neither agricultural nor residential. We have a very specific definition of what the AR zone is and is intended to be in our zoning code. This use does not conform with that definition. It is, and again, this is, I'm trying to keep this very narrow to the question before this board. I understand that, there are all sorts, because this involves especially now with the recent events, a very hot topic on firearms. I'll be clear, I'm not opposed to firearms. I'm very in favor of gun shops in the business district, for example. I wish we had more. And I'm also in favor of collectors in the AR zone. If they want to have firearms, have firearms. I'm not in favor of the business endeavor in the AR zone. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think that's what the zone is intended for. Even speaking to, I think Ron, you made the point about Scott Millar's promotion of certain business uses that would be compatible with the rural character of the town. Those business uses, if the board recalls, all of the examples from the least to most intensive were all specifically related in some way to agricultural uses. Firearms dealing is not related to agricultural uses. So I think in looking at this as narrowly as possible, I think the board, my vote would be to keep it not permitted in the zone for those reasons. This just does not seem to be appropriate, an appropriate use, whether we're talking about firearms or whether we're talking about dealing cars. To me, it's the same issue, and that use, that commercial use, is not appropriate in that zone.
Serge? All right, not appropriate, and that's even with a special use permit.
Correct, I think it should be,
Okay.
restricted. Although, again, I think it is an appropriate use in the GM zone, for example, but it just doesn't seem to be an appropriate use for the AR zone.
And that's not taking into account any of the pre-existing.
There
Or-
is, as far as I'm concerned,
There's
they're
no
grandfathered
discussion,
in,
yeah.
they're grandfathered in,
There's no
and so be it.
discussion, yeah.
I'm not suggesting that they somehow lose their ability to do what they're doing.
Now, I got a question for you, the attorney. If there is a grandfathered holder, okay, Jeff, not Jeff, it doesn't matter who he is. He has one, and he sells his house. The special use, if it was pre-existing, that use goes away when the house is sold.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a special use.
Well, I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
it's a license that, in effect, they can't transfer it.
All right, yeah.
He gets it.
No, I'm just clarifying. Sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Jeff?
If you have a firearms license, are there different grades of it? Is there one collecting versus one for selling?
The type of license that we're discussing is the license to sell, and it's my understanding that there's just one. So you're either licensed to sell or you're not. There are other licenses, you have and other people can probably answer this better, because I'm not. But the license that we specifically discussed at the town council was the license to actually effectuate the transfer of a specific firearm.
So,
And just because you have a blue
a
card
license
doesn't
is
mean
a
that you
license
can do
is a
that.
license.
Well, you have an ownership, you know, the state requires you to have a blue card, so you can own it. You can also have a permit to carry a concealed weapon. But this ATF license that I believe is in your packet allows you to actually effectuate the transfer, and not everybody can do that. So
There's
let's say
nothing
you,
really stopping a collector from asking for a license, saying he's a collector and then buys and sells.
you have to, there's a whole process, and not, I believe that it's very difficult to obtain this license.
If you did that as a collector, a clarification, if you were a collector and you bought and you wanted to sell, legally, you would have to go to one of these people to make the legal transfer.
Right.
Take it to the gun shop.
That's the legal. You could sell it if you want to, but it's
To
not.
somebody with the same license, but he has a location.
Right.
Because it would be permitted at the location. The whole-
Right, it's the location that's
Yeah, I
the,
think that's the whole thing, is the location. All right,
But to be clear, that restriction would be a zoning restriction, not a restriction on their license. They may have a license to sell, but they can't sell at that location because it would not be a permitted use. They'd have to go
you
through,
have to go to
they'd
the
have to go through a licensed,
middle.
permitted,
Basically.
Yeah.
location.
I know Adam had his hand up first, so I will recognize him. Did you have some comments you wanted to?
Yes, please. Adam Dappo, 119A Central Pike. I've been an employee of foster care homes for the last 17 years. You have 8 different levels of FFLs, and one of them being a curio and relic. From what I have seen so far, you guys are so far off the beaten path, it's not funny in the FFL bracket. You can have a CNR, but you are not a legit dealer. That is strictly collectors.
Adam, can I ask you to clarify, what's FFL?
Federal firearms license.
Thank you.
So in order to deal, you have to have a class 1, class 2, a 7, or an 8. And that makes you either a storefront or a manufacturer / gunsmith, which they can wheel and deal also. And with that being said, I don't know where you came up with this collector thing. I really don't, Justin. You just muddied the water.
I'm with
even
Jeff.
more.
I'm just asking for information.
So that's the clarity of that.
So if you, so clarification, so what you're saying, if you have 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, you would have to have a location
You
to
have to have a retail
Okay,
license
all right.
to start.
All right,
Once you have the retail license and the FFL, then you can start wheeling and dealing with different distributors, which allow you to have it shipped to that location where the FFL is attached.
Thank you, Adam. Ms. Ryder?
Well, I actually did some research and I came up with 11 different types of FFLs. And yeah, number 3 is the curio and relic.
Carolyn Relic, which
Right.
does not allow you to wheel and deal, just strictly
Right,
collect.
all of the others do, and most of them, other than, I think, number 8, allow you to manufacture. Now, I think some of the misinformation that has been out there to the public is that an FFL is only shuffling papers. It is just somebody who's qualified to do the paperwork. According to my research, in which you say that is not true. There's not one blanket FFL license,
There isn't, no.
no. So that, and again, you know, when this was brought forward at the council meeting, Mr. Rogers, who was bringing it forward, even said that, and he wasn't speaking about one type of FFL, just the number 8, importer of Title I firearms, ammunition, and Title II, whatever that means. But also, he said, well, what could happen is someone would come in and they would want that person to
build them a rifle. You can get a standard rifle, and then you can go online and you can buy all different things. And one of the things he mentioned was a bump stock and infrared and all of this stuff. And then that person at the gun, who owns the gun shop, puts it all together so that it is, you know, an individual gun, and then he can sell it. That is not just shuffling paperwork.
All right, wait, before we get arguing about this.
I'd like to clarify that.
Hold on, please.
Hang on. What is-
So to the attorney, anything we write should have clarification of these different classifications, all right? Versus just not allowed, we should,
Right, and
1, 3, 7, whatever.
you don't, you know, you can discuss, you don't necessarily need to refer to a classification, but you can discuss, this is the only type of transaction that would be allowed via the special use.
All right, yeah, we gotta do something. All right.
Well, yeah, I think, Ron, what you're getting at, if we decide to allow it as a special use in an AR, then we definitely have to clarify what is allowed in the AR districts. But if it's not allowed, then there's no need for the clarification, because I just want to clarify that. But if it does come to the point where the board feels that it would be allowed in a limited, you know.
Yeah, no, it's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it has to get to there, but I did suggest that if it did get the special use, then we definitely have to have some clarification, it just can't be in the use table. Is anybody else? Did you have something?
Yeah, I'm not gonna get into it, whether she's politically motivated, anything I do, whether it's solar farms or whatnot, to just throw shit up on the end and see if it sticks, and I'm not even gonna elaborate with her. But I will say, there were several residents that came to me that were not happy how it went and was changed. And I will add, at the meeting, when I was asking that it could at least be done by a special use permit, and we talk about rural character, and this doesn't fit in an agricultural community, but I've seen gear machine shops going into AR zone. One used to be at the end of Johnson Road. If you stopped on Johnson Road on South Killenly, he had a special use permit to run his machine shop and produce gears. I don't know what that has to do with tomatoes and milking cows and chickens either, but he was allowed. Another example is we have a guy that does calibrations on all kinds of equipment. He's a climate-controlled building with all kinds of calibration equipment that he would get from Raytheon and other companies, and he calibrates them to make sure that they're reading correctly when they go back out to their manufacturing facility. Again, I don't know what that has to do with chicken, cows, eggs in a rural community, but many things are allowed by a special use permit. At that meeting, the Chief Zeal wanted to make a point that he didn't have a problem with it under the special use permit. He kind of was leaning as that might be the best thing, because you've got many guys out there that can buy and sell guns, and I can buy and sell guns, and I can drive down to King Road and have the guy transfer my gun to the new owner. He can come to my house, he can look at it, and we go down in, things transferred. And if he's, some people don't have a 7-day wait period, some people do, depending on where you are and what you hold. So he said it is such a stringent caliber to be approved for an FFL license. You've got the ATF that oversees you. They come on your property, they want to know where things are locked up, how things are locked up, how many guns you have there, where your ammunition is. Listen, go in my house, I don't have an FFL. I got guns and ammunition everywhere. So I am pro Second Amendment. I do believe that I spoke for the constituents in the town that said, I think this is getting an unfair shake. You may have a guy that has a 200-acre parcel of land with a 1-mile driveway that gets along with all his neighbors and he requests an FFL. It's the same procedure. Everybody gets a registered letter. All the neighbors get to come and speak, and it goes through the planning board and everything else. And sometimes it fails and they walk away. But I think at least with a special use permit, you have some major control and the neighbors have a direct say on it. I think throwing it out the window saying it's not allowed because it's not rural, we had over 40 years with as many as 7 FFL holders in this town, with one being on Route 6, all the others in the AR zone. And not once has there ever been a complaint to the police department or from a neighbor pertaining to any one of them holders of an FFL. So I really do believe you cannot say the same for many of these other businesses, whether they're on Route 6 or in a rural community. I don't think you can find any of them that has that type of record.
Could I, Gordon, you and I are friends, okay?
I was done anyway, so.
Well, it doesn't matter, all right? You come here as a council member, all right? And I appreciate your stance. I would like to not hear later on from some citizen in the audience that you, I, and somebody else cooked this up to pass it,
Oh, it
okay? So, coming here as a council member, I think,
My name was mentioned anyway.
yeah, there's 3 of you here, right? And I would like to, I'm just saying, I would like to not hear that we've been unduly influenced by the council. That should be clear, Gordon.
Okay, I'm just gonna let Bob speak.
Thank you.
So, Bob Boyden, Cucumber Hill Road. So I have quite a bit of personal experience with this question. I held an FFL, and was licensed by the town for around 20 years. I forget exactly when I got the license. When I did, there were other licenses in town. I don't know how long they had existed at that time, but I was asked to go before the zoning board, which I did. And the zoning board granted me a special use permit with restrictions. So what was my intent? Well, I like to collect firearms, I like to trade them, and so I thought the best thing for me to do would be to legitimize it and get an FFL license. At the time, it was fairly routine. It was a background check, I think I was fingerprinted, I can't remember, and I was granted the license by the government. As soon as that happened, I was asked to come before the zoning board, and the restrictions that they placed on me included, and they fit perfectly with my intent. I was not stocking firearms or ammunition. I was trading them. And that turned out to be very compatible with the local ATF people. They were fine with what I was doing. They came to my house several times. They asked me to do a couple of things, like post a license in a visible place in my office and so on and so forth. And it was always a good relationship. No strain, no pain, very respectful. And I traded firearms very carefully because I felt I had some personal responsibility. I think that's the type of person that you're going to find wants to do this. And yeah, I did it for however many years. Some years more business than others, but always some business every year. I didn't make money at it. That wasn't my intent. If you're going to go into that business to make money, you're not going to do it on your kitchen table, as we would call kitchen table dealers. So you have the opportunity to let people in town do something that they want, that a lot of them are going to be doing anyway. There's nothing that says if I have a gun, I don't have this license anymore, I don't have any affiliation with the ATF anymore. There's nothing that says I can't sell you one of my personal firearms. If you come to me and say, gee, I like that gun, Bob, I can sell it to you. And there's nothing that says I have to go through an FFL deal to do it that I'm aware of. It's the intent to do business. It's the intent to do business that the ATF is interested in.
There's an attorney here, right? I thought we've been told someplace that you did have to go through a dealer, a licensed person. Is that true or not, or
It
where
is
are we?
my understanding that yes, you do have to.
So it's changed?
No. You're not getting it.
Rhode Island, maybe it is.
Can we ask Mr. Gaffron? You want
Okay, this part has been a thorn in my side for a very long time. It's cloudy at best on what the definition of that is. If you are going to do a private sale, the seller is responsible for making sure that the future purchaser, or purchasee, should I say, is legal. He has to do his own background check. Who will do that?
So again, it's the intent to be in business that we're interested in here. And, you know, it seems to me, and I think we'll all, everybody in this room will probably admit that it's happening anyway. Gray area, yes, I agree with you. Has anything changed? I don't know, because I haven't been actively trading. I gave up my license in late 2009 or 2010 when I moved across town. I decided not to go through the process again. And so I haven't been doing any trading. Things may have changed in that time. I'm not aware that there's anything that says you have to have a blue card to own a handgun either. You have to have a blue card to buy one from a dealer, but again, in a private transaction, you know, is it a gray area? I suppose it is, yeah. But, you know, if you allow it, you're going to get the opportunity to have a little bit more exposure to and control of what's going on, as opposed to those of us that would really like to be collectors kind of doing it on our own, right?
Right. The purchase of, the reasoning behind the blue card is, it shows that you have taken a safety course and you are not a dummy on this side of the trigger. All right, the thing about that is also, it allows you to transport to and from a bona fide range only. Doesn't allow you to concealed carry. It doesn't allow you to stop off at Lucky's and then hit Helen's on the way back. All right, it's supposed to be to and from.
This is
That is clearly defined.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Thank you, Ed. Ms. Rafferty.
You know, I'm a little bit confused on what the purpose of allowing these in an AR is. Because Mr. Rogers said that what he would do is he would, you know, if he was gonna sell a gun to someone, he could go to someone with an FFL.
Could I ask?
No, but that's what he said.
Forget Mr. Rogers.
Okay, anybody, that you would go,
Please.
you want to sell a gun, you could go to an FFL person and they would, I guess, do a background check. And
They have to.
They have to, okay? But in order to get an FFL, you have to go through a very rigorous investigation, and there's lots of hoops to jump through.
You have to be DOJ approved, you
Right.
have to be fingerprinted, everything is based on approval. It comes out for an ATF, comes out to your premises for
One person
inspection.
at a time.
Has to have safes, everything locked up.
Adam, one person at a
Just like
time.
Mr. Rogers
We
said.
have
But
that. We
allowing,
do have the document on that, but appreciate you.
but allowing then an AR zone, is that going to stop people from having 30 or 40 guns and buying and selling them just because we now have 5 more people in town who have an FFL? I don't see the purpose. You can have it, and yeah, we want small businesses. You can have it in a general business mixed use. But if someone has an FFL and they don't just stop at a type 8, that opens up, not only are they going to be buying and selling, they're going to be manufacturing. Be that, you know, just modifying. And I think that's a slippery slope.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, at this time, can you just poll the board?
Yeah, I'm gonna, hang on, please.
So we
I'm
can,
running the meeting on.
all right, because this will go on all night.
I know, I
Just
just-
poll the board,
I-
we're interested or we're not.
Mr. Savato.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna bring it back to the board for a motion at this time, or, so we can have final discussion and see what we're gonna do. So I'll accept the motion for the use table for the gun gun shops.
I'll make a motion that we leave it as it is, as a prohibited use.
So to leave
Motion has to be.
The motion needs to be in the affirmative.
Affirmative, yeah.
So you need, the motion should state.
so you make a motion to
I'll make a motion that,
just read the use and then name each category of
Well, I
how
think
you want it.
the request from the council
Just for the AR.
was to amend the use table to allow it in an AR zone with a special use permit.
Correct.
So I think the motion should state you move to amend the use table.
Or you can't say that you move not to amend.
Well, no,
it has to be in the.
It has to be in the affirmative,
Yeah,
and then you
amended
can
it.
vote as you like, yeah.
Just make the motion in the affirmative.
Okay, I make a motion that we
Yeah.
amend the ordinance to allow firearm shops, ammunition shops, archery shops, and weapon shops with a special use permit in AR zone.
Do I have a second?
So,
Second by Sergio. Discussion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few other words, I think. Just hearing the discussion, I still feel like the issue is being muddied between Second Amendment issues, collectors, what private citizens want to do or can do in commercial endeavors. The question, again, is a question of land use, it's not a Second Amendment question. This board, I think, should steer clear of even addressing what private citizens should be doing on in their homes. If they want to collect, if they want to sell with or without a license, that's not the question before this board. If they need a license to sell privately, then, and they're doing it without it, that's an issue for the ATF, and I hope none of our neighbors get caught doing that. But, you know, I wish them the best in whatever they're doing. The question before the board is a land use question. Again, as I stated before, with respect to Second Amendment issues, I'm also pro Second Amendment, I'm pro smart land use. As well, we are talking about a commercial endeavor in an AR zone. In looking at our current use table in the AR zone, we do not permit the sale of alcoholic beverages in the AR zone, so we don't permit liquor stores. We do not permit the sale of automobiles in the AR zone. We do not permit the sale of groceries in the AR zone. Why we would permit the sale of firearms in the AR zone makes no sense. It is neither residential nor agricultural. And to Gordon's point, there are absolutely some uses happening right now in the AR zone that probably shouldn't be happening. In my opinion, that's not a reason to permit this use. Instead, it's a reason to maybe go back and look at some of the uses that have been permitted and reassess those. We're talking about whether or not we should permit firearm shops, ammunition shops, archery shops, edge weapon shops. We're not talking about collectors. We're not talking about whether or not private citizens in their homes can be license holders of these federal licenses. All we're talking about is whether they should be permitted to operate one of these shops in the AR zone. As far as I'm concerned, if 100 residents of Foster want to open ammunition shops, then I would love to see 100 ammunition shops open up in the GBM zone. Go ahead, open a shop. But in my opinion, it's not appropriate use for the AR zone. And just like auto sales and alcohol sales and grocery sales, it should, my vote would be to recommend against, or to vote against recommending that it be changed to a special use permit.
Serge, clarification, when you said go back and look at some of these uses, you're not talking about pre-existing, you're talking.
No, I'm saying
I
that if we
know, I
want to
just
look
get
at
it.
amending zoning,
Okay.
maybe that is worth looking
That's all.
at separately, not an agenda item, but he does raise a valid
All
point.
right,
But my point is, I don't think that's a justification for permitting this use in the AR zone. If anything, we want to prevent too much of a slippery slope in the AR zone, permitting too many things that are inappropriate for that zone. So I think the focus needs to stay on land use and what types of uses are appropriate in the zone. And a commercial, retail endeavor, in my opinion, is not, regardless of what the subject matter is not appropriate.
Thank you. Any further discussion from the board? Call for a vote. All in favor? All opposed?
No.
Okay. Passes 6 to
we
0.
all, did we all vote?
Did you want to poll the board? Just to make
Yeah,
sure.
I think you should.
Okay. Well, Rick,
I voted nay.
no, Jeff,
Just so I'm straight, not permitted to special use, to the special use permit. So if I vote,
The motion was to allow it as a special use in the AR zone. If you voted for it, you would allow it as a special use. If you voted against it, you would leave it as it is.
leave it as it is, that's name.
Yes.
That's,
that's your vote,
Jefferson.
okay. Ron,
I'm gonna abstain.
okay. You're Sergio, nay,
Leave it as it
okay. I vote nay, and Joe,
No. So motion passes 5.
motion fails.
Fails 0 to 5 with 1 abstention. Okay.
Joe, I need to go back, I just want to say one thing. Serge brought up one point, and that's alcohol, but it is in what Scott Millar was talking about, there's wineries and beer things, and I think that needs to be discussed. Again, your point, yes, right?
Well, I think, we're gonna go through.
Yeah, I know, I just want to make sure, you know,
Yeah, I mean, we're planning on going over the whole zoning ordinance, but it's gonna be looked at, these tables, all ordinances, we get through the comprehensive plan. And that's all that has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that's all that has to be done in the future. Okay, at this time, there was a request from the review interest and viability of wind ordinances, and we've had a few meetings where we worked on the ordinance, and, it seemed like we're really getting stuck, and I think we wanted to see, if everybody was interested in moving forward, or how we wanted to move forward with this.
I think, okay,
Did you want to? Okay.
I just think that this should, the whole board should be here for this role,
Yeah.
and Mike's gone. And I kind of followed up the delivery of some documentation. I don't know if Cheryl got it. I have hard copies here. I was gonna suggest that we table it until we have a full board. It's not urgent at this point, because we still, if we go yes or no, we still gotta, if we go yes, and we're still gonna have to go through the details.
Well, you can make a motion to table if you'd like at first, if you want to make a motion, so.
Well, I thought I'd throw it out to discuss first.
Yeah,
We can discuss it, and I think it'd be good to discuss. it.
I'll make a motion to, no, if you vote to table, there's no discussion.
Right, that's what I said, do you want,
So
he said he's voting.
I'd like to discuss it, so. If all I'm asking is the chair to hold the board, if there are 4 people here, we don't need Mike, if there are 4 people present of the 6 who do not wish to move forward with wind turbines, let's not waste any more time with this. So, very easily, just ask the board, are you interested, are you interested? If there are 4 people that are saying no, Mike's vote is moot, all right? And we've had four meetings on this, and we're no place, so.
It's the first time that we're
Yeah,
actually voting.
right.
up
So
or down.
I'd like to see us just vote a poll, up or down, and then move out of it.
Well, I think, there is some issues we have to deal with either way. I mean, there's gotta be some, clarity to what we're doing. I mean, I know the minor wind turbines weren't really a problem, so I don't know if we wanna decide how we wanna go about it. To just say we're not gonna do anything, or, not allow them, and, have some type of an ordinance to protect the town. I don't know what's the best remedy, do you think, an ordinance is
Okay, let me do major,
necessary in the town to protect the town, or would the town be protected if it's not allowed because it's not in the use phase?
I think right now the town's stance is that because it's not in the use table, it's a prohibited use. But the use table, I will say, is fairly vague in certain aspects, so there very well could be a challenge. You can specify that you want to have it as a prohibited use.
Right, I just wondering if we clarify it in an ordinance, is it better for the town, even if it's not allowed, to have it in an ordinance that it's not allowed or prohibited, if people felt that way, because I don't think we can just throw the whole thing out.
You don't have, Joanne, what I'm saying is, if there are 4 people here that do, let's major, I'll put major. If there are 4 people here that do not wish to move forward with this, it's not a vote yes or no, it's we're not moving forward. If somebody comes before us, then we have to deal with it. But at this time, we're wasting time. And I think there are 4 votes here to not move forward, so let's get something done. I'm not one of them, so, but I want to quit wasting my time.
So you want an informal poll?
Yeah, I want them to poll the board, it's just asking, do you want to move forward, do you want to move forward?
In regards to major.
In regards to major, yes.
Before we do that, I just want to clarify to the solicitor that if we do that, that's an informal vote. If the town feels there's a need to clarify this, Katie can do it, we know the board doesn't want to move forward with it. We feel that, we should have something in writing to prohibit it, instead of just saying we're not going to move forward with the ordinance at all.
So, what is the question?
God wants
It's
to not move forward with
Right.
the ordinance, so we're just gonna forget about it altogether.
Or should we?
Well, wait a minute, that's not what he said. What he said was let's take a vote on it.
Right.
No, what I said was I want the chair, this is why we should do Robert's rules. I want the chair to poll the board. That's all I'm asking for. Very simple, it's not a vote. And it doesn't get these complicated. In fact,
But then what's the next step if we have a poll?
if we poll and there are 4 people here that think they're gonna vote no in the end, why are we gonna waste our time with who knows how many
Don't we
meetings?
have to bring
Well,
some
but
sort of
there's the
closure?
thing, if they think they're gonna vote no in the end, then do you wanna just talk about prohibiting it?
But that's.
Because if you just drop it, and you don't have any prohibition, it does leave things open.
That was my point.
So you can have
That's all I
follow-up
wanted to
vote.
clarify, because they're voting no to allow it, but that doesn't mean if we make the ordinance to prohibit that they wouldn't go for it. So it's 2 different things.
And you can very well, if there are 4 people who say, no, we don't wanna go forward, you can vote and say, well, do you wanna have it added as a use and prohibited? So, depending on.
And truthfully, Joanna, I don't think you can prohibit it. You can build a lot of rules to not make it fit the town, but
The
I don't think you.
commercial, I mean, the minor, I think we've all agreed is,
Acceptable.
How these things get linked.
We spent a lot of time deciding whether or not we're gonna decide.
It appears to be a necessary
Maybe we should
conversation.
have a decision to either,
Well, you gotta be very careful of what you decide, because you don't wanna shoot yourself in the foot. Not be
Ain't no
able
much
to
fun.
be,
I think there's enough interest in the town population that windmills should be talked about. But we've talked about it a lot, and I think Mr. Gervasio's point is that we are talking about it a lot. So I would say that, if we make a decision to go forward, let's go forward.
that's right. I think we were. So, any further discussion before we pull the board? Did you have anything, sir?
I honestly don't even know what we're being asked right now. I'm totally confused.
That's why I'm trying to.
I think I understand, if you're going to pull the board on what Ron suggested, then I understand the question. If that's what you're gonna do. If we're voting on something else, then I have no idea we're voting.
I just want to know what the consequences of that.
Before we pull the board, we have to clarify what we're.
Clarify what we're.
No, we're not taking action.
So what?
We're just taking, it would
Yeah.
be you taking the temperature of the board.
Right.
Right.
To see if we're going forward. There's no, you correct me if you disagree with me, but there's no actual effect of that action.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so do you want to pull the board down?
What am I pulling the board down? Am I pulling the board down?
If the board wants to move forward with a wind
Move forward.
turbine ordinance in the
On
neighborhood.
permitting wind turbines.
I think this can.
Not
Can I
even
say
permitted.
this?
I think it's, does the board want to move forward on working on this windmill ordinance, or do they just want to drop it off the agenda?
Just discussion.
Can I say,
Right. Do we
like,
wanna
I
move
think, I think
forward?
we should prohibit commercial wind
We're not
turbines
deciding
in
yet.
AR zones.
We're deciding if we want to move forward.
I'll move forward. Okay.
So
I guess I don't understand.
we can, if we move forward, we discuss how we want to handle the ordinance, and then that'd be the future meeting. So we're going to pull the board and see if we want to move forward.
And, I think I just agree with everybody, basically, that we've really discussed wind turbines at length. And so, probably.
Robert's rules.
I'm a little unclear on why you're laughing at this point.
That's what he does.
If there was a question of what I was doing, the chair should have dealt with this with the planner and the council before coming here and starting the discussion with the 6 people that are here that don't know what it is I'm asking for, or should have just not brought it up. Poor Lynn has got her hand up, and I
I
don't
just
want
wanted to
her.
ask a question.
I know, it's sometimes not get too much discussion on this.
I know, no, I just wanted to ask a question.
Okay.
I understand from attending the meetings that there is so much federal regulation and that three-phase power is so limited that it is extremely unlikely that you would get a commercial enterprise here. The one thing I'm not clear on is that there was a bill that was put forward where, I don't know if it was the state, the federal government, or the utility would be required to provide the three-phase power to wherever someone wanted to put a commercial wind turbine. And is that still on the table? Because if that's still on the table, that's where you may want to act, because it,
If we continue the ordinance, then we'll probably look into that. At this point, we're pulling the board, so I want to pull the board and see if we want to move forward with the ordinance.
Mr. Chairman,
Is everybody
can I
clear?
make a motion, and maybe that will clarify what we're doing?
That's fine.
I'd like to move to,
Okay.
to have this board move forward on this ordinance and pass an ordinance of some sort. Or recommend an ordinance.
Second.
And we've got a second.
Moving forward.
All right, further discussion.
I think I agree with that, because whichever way you go, you're gonna have to have an ordinance, so I'm good with that.
All right, so should we just take a vote if we want to?
Yes.
All right, all in favor of moving forward with the wind turbine ordinance, say aye. Aye.
There you go.
Oh. See what, that's part of my day. All right, we have a major land development, comprehensive plan, anything on that? This evening?
Quickly, I did meet with Laura Sparks this afternoon, and had a very good meeting with her. I'm gonna give her a list of the maps that we need, and she's gonna get back to me and, let me know about her availability, and, I'm looking forward to working with her. I hope that she'll agree to take it on. But she said she had within my computer that she can actually extract what she needs, so I think we're moving forward with maps.
Okay, future agenda, I think Ron wanted to put something on there about sidewalks. I don't need it specific, but I think we just put it in sidewalk. As a general concept, how we want it.
now under future agenda items.
Yeah, they've been on it for a while. That was something Ron was on there.
Yeah, I do have some.
Did you have something?
I do. I'm afraid to bring it up. I think we should have an ordinance concerning community wellhead protection zones.
We have.
Yeah, I thought we did.
Yes, yes. They're designated by the state. I live in one.
Yeah.
Hammond Hill is one. The area around the Payne School, all that is one.
Yeah, there's a map somewhere. There's a map
Yeah.
somewhere.
This has the
It has the wellhead.
highest classification of water quality that you can
Yeah.
get for drinking.
And so what was it, Rick, that you?
I think we should have an ordinance that, or something that defines what kind of development you're going to allow in wellhead protection zones, because you see, like I was in Fredericton, New Brunswick in July, and they have well fields for their water, and they just, certain uses are allowed and other uses are not allowed. So it's something that I think that when the state designated these areas, that they were throwing it to the local communities to come up with the ways to protect these groundwater resources.
I know they are considered in the subdivisions. That would be what we can put that on